والله يدعو إلى دار السلام ويهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم.
Islam. Islam 101.
In the last episode, we dealt with the issue of a nikah in Islam, or marriage in Islam. And we had a number of comments that were made by some of the viewers who have been following our program, that they wanted this program to continue in terms of the discussion. So we're going to add another program for you, the respected audience, hopefully to get more benefit concerning this most important topic. Because, as we mentioned, if a person doesn't get married the correct way, as a result of that, there are some evil and negative ramifications. It may be that his children who come as a result of that marriage, they may be considered to be illegitimate children. And he may be considered even to be a person who is committing zina, adultery, or fornication. So we want to recap very quickly the 5 conditions of the marriage, and then we're going to go to our students who have quite a few questions that are new questions and questions that were connected to the last program, the last episode. In order for the marriage to be considered a correct marriage in Islam, it requires that we have to have the consent of the girl. She has to say, okay, I want to marry this individual, and she can't be compelled to marry someone that she doesn't want to marry. Number 2, we have to have the guardian, a Muslim male, relative of the girl preferably, or any Muslim man who has authority. For an example, the local masjid. That individual has to be responsible for the girl throughout the process of marriage, prior to her getting married, during the time that she's married. If there are any problems, they refer back to him, and he helps to make peace, to make islah, to bring the affairs back together. Number 3, the man who wants to marry the girl, he has to give her a dowry, a token of his appreciation, to say to her, I appreciate the fact that you have agreed to marry me. The wali, the guardian of the girl, has to fear Allah as it relates to this issue and not make it difficult by making an exorbitant dowry on the shoulders of the boy. And stay away from all of the other issues that will unnecessarily delay the marriage. We want our youth, we want our youngsters to hurry up and get married. There's too many trials and tribulations to the right of them, to the left of them, on TV, mass media, advertisement, everywhere they're looking. There's the problem of their desires. In the societies that we're living in, it's very easy for a girl or boy to fall into what would be displeasing to Allah and what would be a disgrace to her mother and her father. So don't help the devil against your children. Finally, the last 2 conditions that have to be present is that there has to be 2 male witnesses. 2 male witnesses. In the absence of 2 male witnesses, you can have 4 witnesses from amongst the women. 4 women who are witnessing that issue, or 1 male and 2 women. This is the correct 5 conditions that have to be present concerning the dowry in Islam, concerning the marriage in Islam. So we're going to open up the floor, inshallah, in the discussion, answer the questions of all of the brothers. We're going to start with my brother Sardar, inshallah. Sardar, go ahead.
Okay, my question is that in Islam, men can have several wives, but women cannot have several husband, I mean. So some people say that it's unfair. What you can say to them?
Concerning the age-old argument, if men can have more than 1 wife, why shouldn't it be that women can have more than 1 husband? We say that this is a classic case of mixing apples and oranges and judging in an affair that is totally different. One of the main reasons why men have more than 1 wife in Islam, a man can have more than 1 wife, is because there are more women than there are men. If you gather together all of the women in the world, all of the men in the world, and you married each and every man to one woman, there are going to be a number of women who are left out in the cold. So what do? Islam allowed us to take more than one wife. And in the issue of taking more than one wife, it is an issue with a system. It is not something that's done haphazardly, without any responsibility. Now is not the time to get into that. But taking another wife is not something that is necessarily easy, and it's not for every single individual. Another case, as it relates to a man having multiple wives and why a woman doesn't have the ability to have more than one husband, is because when the woman conceives and she becomes pregnant, who does the child belong to? Someone will say, well, we could just do a DNA test. Well, that wouldn't be realistic, because some people have the ability to do DNA tests, some people in the West, but the vast majority of people in this world, they don't have the resources that will allow them to do a DNA test, especially in the places where the Muslims come from right now. They wouldn't be able to do DNA tests. So as we mentioned so many times before, Islam came to protect 5 things, and one of the things that it came to protect is the lineage. So the Prophet of Islam himself, he told the Muslim men, do not allow one man's semen to enter upon another man's semen, which is a very important hadith. It's a very important aspect of our religion. A sister, a lady, she embraces the religion of Islam. And there's a brother who sees her and he wants to marry her because he's impressed with her religion, impressed with her, and he wants to marry her. We say, you have to look at this hadith of Rasulullah that I just mentioned, and you have to wait. And you have to wait until that particular girl has 1 monthly cycle so that we can be absolutely sure she is not carrying the baby of another man. Whether it was her husband in the times when she wasn't a Muslim, or whether it was a person who was not her husband. So in Islam, before a man can marry another woman, if it is known that she's not a virgin girl, then it's not permissible to allow one man to enter his fluid upon another woman. So if it was allowed for her to have more than one husband, there can be discrepancies as it relates to who the actual father is of the baby that's in her womb. So those are some of the issues, but we say again, the women have to be satisfied with being women, and men have to be satisfied with being men. We have our own unique responsibilities and our own unique creation, and we have to be satisfied with what Allah has legislated for both sexes. Okay, Akhi Ahmed.
I actually have a question about engagement. And during engagement, find a lot of Muslims in Muslim community fall into impermissible acts. So if you can shed the light on some of the issues that pertain engagement.
Concerning the issue of engagements, and we use that word very loosely, engagements. We shouldn't view engagement in the way that the typical Western outlook and understanding of engagement is. Yes, there's nothing wrong with having a process by which both families come to know each other. The girl and the boy, they come to know each other. And then they may decide, okay, we're going to get married, but we want to wait until we finish our education. Or we want to wait until the boy can save up enough money to do A, B, or C. This is permissible in the religion. But it's only permissible when we can keep and maintain the limits that have been ordained by Allah. There's no dating. It's not permissible, even though they're going to get married and they are engaged. Doesn't mean that they can go to the movies alone. Doesn't even mean that they can sit in his house or her house alone. There always has to be a third party who is an adult and they can supervise what's going on. So this concept of the engagement, it shouldn't be viewed in the typical Western concept. And we have to be careful because of these long, drawn-out engagements many times only opens up the door for some problems. The boy starts to find it very difficult to control himself, and the girl finds it difficult to control herself. And the natural process takes over because a shaitan, the devil, Satan, is inside of the mix, inside of the issue. And then before you know it, something takes place that will dishonor everyone who's involved in that particular process of getting married. So the engagement is okay, but don't look at it from the Western outlook and viewpoint. We have to have some give and take in the issue, especially as it relates to those people who are reverts to the religion. The revert comes into the religion and he doesn't have a history of a family where the girl's family or the boy's family can look to see what kind of cloth was he cut from, or was she cut from? So therefore, it may require a little longer so that the people will come to know who this individual is and where do they come from. So that requires some serious consideration and contemplation for the one who wants to marry the revert. Again, the bottom line is the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If someone comes to you and you are impressed and you are pleased with his religion and with his character, the way he is, then marry him. If you don't marry him, then there's going to be corruption in the earth. And we should try to facilitate ease for all of the people involved. Akhi Yasir.
I have a comment on the case which my brother Sardar talked about.
Tfaddal.
In this case, I think not just Muslims who refuse that case. As a Muslim, I can't imagine my wife in a relation with another man. And also, my brother Nick, can you imagine your wife in a relationship with another man?
I have no wife, actually, but it will be a desirable situation. I wish I will never be in that kind of situation where my wife is with another man.
No one can imagine it. Also, I know this is not your question. You heard it. Who said, who asked this question, can't imagine his wife in this case. Not just Muslims. Okay?
You have a question? You want to ask a question as well? Any more questions? Nick?
I've got some. My first question is, I know that Muslims are allowed several wives. And imagine such a situation. A man already has, say, 3 wives. And he wants to marry 4th. But the new wife is younger and is stronger and is more beautiful. And it can cause kind of jealousy and bad treatment from the side of previous wives. What kind of regulations are in Islam to prevent such situation?
Concerning this issue of the plural marriage, I think that there needs to be an episode that will be dedicated to the fiqh and the understanding and how to practice plural marriage correctly. Because as I mentioned, plural marriage is a misunderstood aspect of our religion, even by Muslims. And it's not practiced all the time in the correct way. The best way and the best practice of the plural marriage is what we had with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even with him, there were some jealousies that transpired between some of his wives. But I think the main ingredient as it relates to this issue, and the overriding factor, is the concept of a taqwa, the concept of being conscious of Allah and fearing Allah. The husband and all of the women involved, and even that extends to all of the family members connected to all of them, all of the friends connected to all of them. We have to have a level of taqwa. With God consciousness and with taqwa, people will avoid oppressing each other and avoid falling into that which is not permissible. So we're going to stop right here, inshallah, and we'll come back to this issue after the break. We hope that you'll tune in. May Allah make it easy for all of us.
Islam 101.
Many people trying to get together, but all their efforts were in vain because of ignoring or turning away from this great foundation. We see many people coming to the way of truth, following the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but later on, they get off track. What is the reason behind that? Unity is a result. It's not a cover-up. We have to be united from inside. And Allah made this clear in the Quran when He said, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ.
Islam 101.
Welcome back to the second chapter of Islam 101, and we're dealing with the issue of marriage in Islam. We were speaking about a number of issues, and we left off with the last point concerning everyone fearing Allah as it relates to the plural marriage issue, the husband who has multiple wives. He has to fear Allah. His wives have to be people who fear Allah and all of their relatives also have to be conscious and diligent in trying to fear Allah. And this is going to minimize the problems and not allow the problems to get out of hand, which will ultimately lead to people being unhappy, which will also lead to divorces. And then we have all of the other social issues that come as a result of that. Children who are growing up in fatherless homes. So every man, he has to fear Allah. Ali ibn Abi Talib, radiyallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him, he gave advice to the men who are the wali or the guardians, the awliya of these women. If you were a guardian of a woman, he said, marry your ward, your daughter, your sister. Marry her off to a man who has a taqwa, to a man who has God consciousness. Because this individual, if it turns out that he loves your daughter, he loves her, he's going to always honor her, live with her and be married to her in honor. And if he doesn't love her, because they're not compatible or something happens, he doesn't love her, he's not going to oppress her. So with this taqwa, with this God consciousness, if this man were to get another wife, a second wife, a third wife, he would always try his best to make jihad against his desires to practice the religion and to do what is correct and to be fair and just. So plural marriage is not easy and it's not for everyone. You have to have enough money, and that's not the most important issue. Has to have enough time, and he has to have the disposition and the mentality to be able to manage such a situation. And in addition to that, he has to have a group of women who have harmony between themselves. He cannot be married to one woman who is like fire in her personality. Then he's going to bring into the equation a woman who's like gasoline or petrol. It doesn't work and it doesn't make sense. So it's not about your desires. Marriage is about helping to build and to further the cause of the Islamic community. We want to shift gears now and want to leave the issue of marriage altogether as it relates to our explanation. Maybe another question will come about marriage. We'll deal with that. And we want to go into the next topic that's connected to marriage, and that is the divorce, talaq. Getting divorced in Islam. Many people misunderstand this point as well from the Muslims. They think that when you want to divorce a lady, please pay attention to this issue, Muslim or non-Muslim. It is not correct when a man wants to divorce his wife that he says to his wife, you're divorced, you're divorced, you're divorced. That is not the correct understanding. Nor is it correct for him to say, you're divorced, and then he waits a month, and then he says you're divorced, and then he waits the third month, and then he says you're divorced. This is not the correct way of divorcing the woman. The correct way of divorcing the woman in Islam is, if a man wants to divorce his wife, he has to wait, and he has to look. Today I want to divorce my wife. This man is saying, I'm speaking on behalf of this man, because as it relates to divorce, brothers, Rasulullah said, don't play around with the issue of divorce. When you play with it, it's viewed as being serious. You can't say, you're divorced, and then come and say, I was just playing. If you say you're divorced, even if you were playing, it counts. So the correct way that a man divorces his wife, he says, I want to divorce my wife, so now I have to look. Have I had any physical relationships with her since her last mens? If I did, then I can't divorce her. I have to be patient. I have to wait until her new mens comes. And if I still want to divorce her and I'm adamant about divorcing her, once she becomes clean, I say, you're divorced. That's the first divorce in Islam. That's the correct way. And look at the wisdom behind this. If a man has had relationships with his wife and now he has to wait for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and he waits for the menses, what do you think is going to happen? He's going to start desiring his wife again. His anger is going to subside. They're going to come to their senses and they're going to make up. So that's one of the practical ways in which the legislation of Islam has reduced the divorce rate. So that's the first thing. He has to look. Have I had relationships with her? If he didn't have relationships with her since her last mens, he can say you're divorced. Now she waits for 3 menses, not 3 months, for 3 menses. And she remains in his home. She shouldn't leave his home, nor should he leave the home. If 3 cycles come and go, then that woman is divorced from that man and she can leave the house and she's free to marry someone else. While he's waiting for those 3 cycles to come, the 3 menses to come, if he says to his wife, I want to take you back, and they agree to come back, or if they have physical relationships, if they have sexual relationships, then that is the first divorce that has been broken. They live together for 5 more years. Something happens. He becomes upset. He wants to divorce her. He follows the same process. He says, did she have her cycle yet? If she didn't have her cycle, he can say you're divorced. Now she's waiting for 3 cycles again. If he brings her back by saying it, or he has relationships with her, then that's the second divorce. They come together. 3 cycles is very important that it's not 3 months. So now he's on 2 divorces. He divorced her the first time that I explained to you. He did the same thing the second time. You have to look. Did she have her cycle? If she had her cycle, you have to wait until a new cycle comes. If you are adamant about divorcing her, you can divorce her. If she didn't have a cycle, then you can divorce her right then, and she can wait, and she has to wait for the 3 monthly cycles. After that, 6 years go by, and something else happens. He has to wait, and he has to see, did she have her cycle or not? If she didn't have her cycle, and he says, you're divorced, that is the 3rd divorce. At that time, she doesn't have to wait for any cycle as it relates to her husband. She just goes and she's out of his house, and it's not permissible for them to be together now, because in this case, she's like any other woman to him, and he's like any other man, and he can never remarry her again until she married another man, and that man consummated the marriage. As it relates to the woman who is pregnant, if she is divorced during her pregnancy, then the period that is something that is permissible. Obviously, she's not going to have a cycle because she's pregnant. So if he says to the pregnant woman, you are divorced, then what happens is she, instead of waiting for the cycle to come, she waits for her baby to drop. If her baby falls back without him saying, you're my wife again, or without him having relationships with her again, then that is the completion of that particular marriage. She can go off and she can marry someone else. So I'm going to stop here because I hope that's clear. If not, maybe it'll come through the questions of the student. So if you guys have any questions concerning the process of a divorce, the danger of divorce, or whatever, you can ask here. Before you do so, there's a famous hadith that you may have heard of. Out of all of the things that are halal, all of the things that are permissible, the most hated thing by Allah that's permissible is divorce. This is an unauthentic hadith. It's not authentic. And we explained in the halal and the haram of al-Islam that the haram are those things that are harmful or dirty. And the halal are those things, the permissible things are those things that are beneficial and they're pure. Those things that will bring you some benefit. So how is Allah, the Most High, going to allow something and it is something that He hates? He only allows to be permissible those things that He loves and those things that He likes. But it shouldn't be misused and it shouldn't be abused, the divorce. The man should think 1,000 times, 2,000 times before destroying the bond of his family. Okay, Ahmed, you have a question?
I have a question actually pertains Muslims who speak Arabic. You find a lot of guys who are married and they swear by divorce. And they swear a lot by divorce. So what is the ruling of that?
Concerning this issue of some of the Muslim people who speak Arabic, they'll say to their wife, or they'll even say to any regular person, they'll say to the taxi driver, if you don't take me here, wallahi, I'll divorce my wife. I swear that I'll divorce my wife. It's a condition. If you don't do it, I'll divorce my wife. Or he may say to his wife, for an example, if you don't do this, I'm going to divorce you. But this is talking about the swear. You have to do it or I'll divorce my wife. What is that? Does that actually count? Does that actually work? There is a lot of speech from the scholars of Islam concerning this. All I want to mention here concerning this point is that it shouldn't be done. I don't want to open the door of this discussion right now because I think it's a topic that needs to be discussed from top to bottom. Does it happen? Does it not happen? If the taxi driver doesn't take him, does he have to divorce his wife? I don't want to open that discussion right here. All I say is people should avoid using that type of swearing. To swear, you should just say, wallahi, or swear by one of the characteristics of Allah and not swear by the divorce. Yes, sir.
Do I have some responsibilities towards my wife after divorcing, according to Islam regulations?
If a man divorces his wife, does he have any responsibility towards her after the divorce? Of course he has responsibilities towards her, especially if she has children. And the first responsibility is what Allah told us in the Quran, the men who divorces their wives. وَلَا تَنْسَوْا الْفَضْلَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Don't forget the virtues that existed between you people. You were together. You have children. She gave you things that no one else gave you in the life. How can you now turn around and become a criminal? And how can she turn around and become a criminal? And you start dealing with each other as in an uncivilized manner. So the first right is that you guys, everyone, they have to remember the rights. They have to remember the virtues that both parties have over the other party. Also, in addition to that, if she has children, he's responsible for maintaining those children, for providing for and maintaining all of his children. From what is not her right is what we find in the Western societies, that she is entitled to alimony. She gets half of his property. This is not Islamic. She doesn't have a right to half of his property. She has a right to what Allah has ordained for her. And that is that he takes care of his children. And that may include their second or their docile, where they're going to live, their shelter. He has to take care of their education, has to take care of their what they need to eat, and so forth and so on. That's his responsibility if he doesn't have custody of those children. And then if and when he gets custody of the children, he is not responsible. As long as he has children connected to that woman, he has to take care of those children. But if he doesn't have any children connected to her, then she's a regular Muslim. He makes dua, supplication for her, and that's it. He doesn't have any responsibility to that particular woman. He divorces a woman, and he continues to pay for the next 25, 30 years money as alimony to her. This is not permissible. This is not permissible, and it's not from our religion. So we want to tell our sisters, especially in the West, be careful about using the laws of the non-Muslims, the disbelievers, in order to oppress the Muslims. Like going to the court of law in the secular countries like the US and the UK, and you bring the man up on charges and they give you half of his earnings. This is not permissible. This is stealing in religion of Islam. This is sariqah, stealing, and it's not permissible. I don't think we have any more time. I'm sorry, guys. Inshallah, I'll be sure to let you guys get the first question in the next episode. Bidhnillah. We're going to bring this topic about marriage and divorce to a close. Hot topic. And it's a topic that really needs more discussion, to be honest with you. Hopefully, we may make some topics about what Ahmed mentioned and other than that. But until then, tune in for the next episode of Islam 101. It's a pleasure having you with us.
Islam. Islam. Islam.